Three kinds of metric trade-off questions you might face in your PM interviews. Engagement on feature A goes up by X%, but engagement on feature B goes down by Y%. What do you do? Should TikTok show a sponsored post on the For You page? Or should they show a suggested account for you to follow? Or how would you design an experiment to increase revenue at Target? These are all metric trade-off questions, and in this video, we're going to cover how to answer these kind of questions as a part of our Liftoff PM execution interview series. Welcome to Liftoff PM. My name is Kevin Wei, a senior product manager at Amazon, and my hope is that this channel will be your go-to resource for your PM interview prep. We have free lessons on our channel, and if you want access to our complete paid course, click the link below. We know there are a lot of courses out there, but you can think of our course as a comprehensive accelerator program where we share everything we've learned from years of coaching students and clients like you to land PM offers at FAANG and top startups. And we'll continue to make free content, so an easy way to show support is to just like this video and subscribe. With these trade-off questions, your interviewer is looking for your ability to break down ambiguous problems into manageable pieces, explain your decision-making process using strategic insight and data, and show how you make recommendations based on that. The good news is that you'll be using the same building blocks that we've mentioned in other Liftoff PM lessons to approach this flavor of execution question with a few slight differences which we'll cover for you. So first, let's start with the hypothetical metrics question. Engagement on feature A goes up by X%, but engagement on feature B goes down by Y%. What do you do? When you're approaching this kind of question, here are the high-level steps you should take. First, as always, ask clarifying questions. For example, you could ask how long it's been launched, who it was launched to, and why we were launching it in the first place. Next, identify a higher level goal and North Star metric. Think about what metric you might use to measure value that might capture value for all users. Try to come up with something that captures success across all the impacted user groups, as well as the company. Like for DoorDash, you have couriers, you have customers, and you have restaurants. For example, let's also say YouTube, right? Watch time is a commonly cited metric for North Star metric for YouTube. It's good for viewers, it's good for creators, it's good for advertisers, and ultimately, it's good for YouTube. Then discuss the hypothetical outcome if you took outcomes to an extreme. For instance, if feature A continued to see high engagements and feature B low engagement forever, what would happen? Is that desired? It doesn't have to be a blanket yes or no statement. Maybe the outcome is more tolerable in some cohorts than others, but think about that. Next, define what data you would look at. List what metrics and launch criteria you would have set for this launch, for both top-line metrics and guardrail metrics. The exact numbers here aren't that important, rather you just need to know which metrics you're keeping an eye on. Then discuss your decision-making process, and based on this, summarize your recommendation in an if-then format for when you should ship, not ship, or retest. And if the target metric was hit and guardrails were met, then launch. If neither were met, roll back. The more nuanced discussion comes when the target metric was hit but the guardrail was not. And finally, if applicable, suggest any next steps. And here you want to be proactive about the trickier case and suggest maybe some small fixes that you want to test with. Your interviewer may also ask you to set up experiments more in depth, which luckily we'll cover in the next section. Now let's get into a trade-off execution question and see how a strong hire candidate might answer it. So the question is, imagine you launch an experiment for a music streaming app and you see internal shares go up by 15%, but external shares go down by 15%. What do you do? So quick note here, this feels awfully close to a root cause analysis question, but note that the cause of the metric change was already given. If you were asked, you're working on an experiment for a music streaming app and you see internal shares go up by 15%, but external shares go down by 15%, what do you do? That would be a root cause analysis question. But with execution, it's kind of hard to fit these questions into a box. So the best way to handle this situation is to set an agenda with your interviewer on how you plan to tackle the question. And that way your interviewer can nudge you back on course if they had a different scope of the problem in mind. So first, as always, clarify. Is an internal share basically like an in-app DM? What stage of growth is this music streaming app? How does it make money? Is it ad supported, subscription supported, or both? Or maybe it doesn't make any money yet. Let's say this app has found product market fit and it's in an early stage growth phase. The monetization model is a freemium approach. You just get a certain limit of listen time and then you hit a paywall to subscribe. So with this context, start to identify the North Star. Since this is a paid app, it's reasonable to assume that the North Star is paid subscribers. Why not overall active users or something else engagement related? Well, imagine if it was overall active users as an example. Imagine a scenario where you had a ton of free active users, but no paid subscribers. Would you consider that a success? Probably not, since your end goal is to make money. Paid subscribers is a better proxy of success because in order to have a healthy group of paid subscribers, it's needed to have a healthy group of free active users who eventually become converted to paid subscribers. Next, take the given scenario to the extreme. If internal shares continued increasing at this rate and external shares continue to decrease, what would this do to your North Star metric? Work through this by verbalizing what value an internal versus an external share might bring to the user and to the company. Both an internal and external share are valuable to users because they can share music with connections. An internal share is better in terms of getting people to stay in the app, while an external share is better to potentially expand the user base to those who are not currently engaged with the app. Notice how if you were optimizing for time in-app, an internal share would be better since conversations about music would happen on platform rather than in WhatsApp or iMessage or somewhere else. The North Star metric you pick is critical to the rest of the question. And since we picked paid subscribers as our North Star, which type of share do you think is best for growth? You could argue that internal shares are better for paid growth because deeper app engagement makes it easier for users to see upsells, or that in-app engagement is correlated to strong conversion rates. But at the same time, you could also argue that external shares are better for paid growth because external shares grow top of funnel users, which eventually will convert in your monetization funnel. So what do? You can tell the interviewer what data you're looking at. This is not a guessing game. Remember, this is an A/B test that you set up, so you have access to all the data you need. You could say, when we set up this experiment, the primary metrics I track are signups as well as subscription churn, because this will get me overall paid subscribers. And as secondary metrics, I would also want to monitor time spent in the app, literally or maybe via minutes listened, since one of these hypotheses was that in-app engagement may lead to better conversion rates as well as new app users, since the other hypothesis was that external shares could also bring people onto the app and that would trickle down. Now, show the interviewer how you would look at the data to see if the treatment saw more or fewer subscribers in the control. Your decision-making process might sound something like this. If the treatment saw more subscribers, that would point to internal sharing being more valuable for our North Star metric. If I saw the amount of subscribers being neutral, I would err on the side of rolling back since there was no clear user or business win to the experiment. If the treatment saw fewer subscribers, that would point to external sharing being more valuable for our North Star. Following up, be proactive and make an educated guess on which you think it is. For example, if I were to guess which outcome is more likely, I'd say that external shares might be better for signups. While it's valid that more time in-app leads to more exposure to potential upsells as well as deeper engagement within the app itself, it's not like users who are using WhatsApp or iMessage to send links and talk about music won't see those in-app upsells at all, nor does it mean we can't reach them through other channels. Also, users will hit their listening time limit whether they're using internal or external shares, and users feel the same need of linking and discussing whether it's in-app or external messaging. Because we saw that external shares were more valuable to paid signups, I might take it a step further and run an experiment to remove internal sharing altogether. My hypothesis would be that internal sharing is cannibalizing the effects of external sharing because you only need to share once. Why offer two ways to do the same thing? All right, now let's tackle the second kind of trade-off execution question. Should TikTok show a sponsored post on the For You page, or should they show a suggested account for you to follow? You want to follow a similar framework like the last question, but with a few adjustments. When you're identifying the higher level goal, just like before, State the specific metric you're optimizing for. Here, let's say that we're optimizing for average revenue per user. And at this stage, they don't have an engagement issue, and revenue is the lagging indicator of healthy engagement. Next, when discussing hypothetical outcomes, consider this. If you only showed a sponsored post forever, sponsored posts would probably become less effective as users start to get ad blindness and or annoyed at overly promotional content. If you only showed follower suggestions forever, you might hit a saturation point where people's networks max out on their size. So next here, we have a new section that we haven't touched on previously. This is designing the experiment. And here you'll want to lay out your hypothesis, the audience you plan to test with. You want to list the top line metrics for the product and company and counter metrics and dimensions of interest. Some examples on dimensions might be age. Maybe high school age users are meeting many more people than average, so it might be more important to show them a follower suggestion than for others. Maybe it'll be better to show an ad to an older user since they have more purchasing power than teens. And also don't forget to call out what the control is. And feel free to pause the video here to see the concrete details on the experiment design. You'll want to call out the hypothesis, control, treatments, who you're targeting, as well as your success metrics, like we mentioned. So to recap, the main difference is that in this kind of question, you're going to want to propose an actual experiment in addition to having a discussion on the higher level trade-off and metrics to be considered. Now, the final kind of execution trade-off question. How would you design an experiment to increase revenue at target? Here, your process will mostly be similar to the previous questions. The slight difference is that in the TikTok question, there was a specific trade-off being discussed. In this case, the question is more open-ended, so the key component here is to be able to scope down the problem to an area that would be most impactful to experiment on. And revenue growth is a very nebulous problem, so it's up to you to narrow down the scope of the test. Let's walk through an example. Clarify the question, and for the North Star metric, this is pretty much set for you since the question's about increasing revenue. Note, you will want to define the specific definition of revenue, whether it's ARPU or lifetime value, and we'll discuss specifics in the example later. Next, scope down the problem. My advice is to walk through the entire user journey to gather thoughts on which part of the funnel would be most effective to experiment within. For example, a user has to be drawn to and choose Target as their shopping destination for the items they're thinking of, be able to find those items either in store or online at a price they like. And this could mean literally searching for the product as well as being able to easily compare and contrast items, and successfully check out with those items. Then narrow down a focus area so that you are experimenting on the part of the funnel that has the most room for growth. Based on what we know about Target, their checkout process is probably smooth enough. They're a Fortune 500 company, not an upstart e-commerce site trying to break in. Let's descope bottom of funnel conversions. While Target is a well-known brand, they're still facing a lot of competition from others like Walmart and Amazon. They sell many undifferentiated items like groceries, paper goods, etc. So you can guess that Target needs to beat out the Walmarts and Amazons for business in that sector. In order to do this, Target needs to draw more people into choosing Target for their shopping. And furthermore, revenue growth isn't going to come from people who do their weekly shopping at Target, but rather it's going to come from people who don't have a particular store that they're loyal to. So maybe we want to run an experiment to see if we can increase shopping amongst the occasional and rare shopper cohort. Then, just like you would in an experiment one-pager on the job as a PM, you would specify what your hypothesis is, your audience, and experiment arms. You also want to share your decision-making process. This could be like a matrix, and any next steps. So, in summary, each of these questions are made up of the same building blocks, and they have very minor variations to them. Final advice and pitfalls to avoid: there's no right or wrong answer on the North Star, but it's critical that you're on the same page as the interviewer. If they are not aligned here, you can see how the misalignment will cascade throughout the rest of the exercise. When designing the experiment, keep it simple. Resist the urge to impress your interviewer. You'll just overcomplicate things. Just change one variable at a time. Resist the urge to list out every single metric and set that expectation with the interviewer. In real life, you'll have built-out analytics dashboards with anything you could imagine, but on your call, Just stick to the P0 metrics. A common question from students is what level of detail they need to get into. This is an execution interview, so how deep in the weeds do you need to get? My rule of thumb is to include the amount of detail that you would include in writing your experiment one-pager on the actual job as a PM. For example, your one-pager would definitely need your input on the hypothesis, arm treatments, metrics, and launch criteria. But you'd probably delegate other aspects of the experiment configuration, like the cohort size and the length of experiment, to a data science team. And that's it. Good luck with your upcoming PM interview, and click the link below to access the Liftoff PM Comprehensive Paid PM Interview course. This is the same advice we give our students and has helped so many of them land their dream PM jobs at FAANG companies and top startups. See you in the next video.